cover, hopefully, and then I'll be able to continue on. Okay. First time. Okay. So, I really, I know that you guys have been in a series. You started a series, was it last week?
Yes.
Okay, and you're talking about things that we want for Christmas. And I want to tell you the real reason why Eric asked me to speak this morning. It's because he wanted me to talk about family, and we all have families that we come from. Some of us have good experiences in families. Some of us have not so good experiences in families. And Eric knows, as a matter of fact, that my family is perfect. That's why he asked me to speak to you. Let's see the next slide here. Okay, I am a perfect family expert. And so I know that I can definitely speak on this subject. I mean, look at the shades. It tells you everything. Let's see the next slide. This is my wife, Michelle. I actually am so perfect in my family that I got permission to speak on this, and I got permission from my family to use these pictures because they're so, nice. My wife and I always get along. We never fight. We never have any disagreements whatsoever, not even a minor disagreement. Whenever I ask her what she wants to eat for dinner, immediately gives me an answer. Not even a question in her mind. She knows immediately, and I don't even have to wait, and we can just go directly to the restaurant, or I can make it for her, and it's delicious every time. I always look for ways to help her out around the house. That's why our house is immaculate. I mean, we can eat off the floors. It's beautiful in our house. I mean, wow. Okay, so the next slide here. Okay, my two older kids. They, the only thing that makes them not so perfect is their deficiency in height. Which is okay because I'm also not very tall, so it's actually kind of perfect, isn't it? My son right there, he's very active. He's an outdoorsy person. He goes hunting all the time. We have so much meat in the freezer that we could eat for years. That's one of his skills in the back end. My daughter, so wonderful. We never have any drama issues with her unless she's on stage performing drama. It's just wonderful. It's awesome. You should come and see her sometimes. That stage in the back there, that's her stage also. So let's go to the next slide here. Our two younger children, this is them. They pretty much take care of the homestead. We don't have to do a thing. We don't have to lift a finger. I mean, I'm always looking for ways to help my wife, but she's like, yeah, the little kids are doing it. So we don't even have to do anything. They milk Bessie in the backyard. They take care of everything. They feed us. They when we get sick, they nurture us back to health. I was wondering where my son was because he was he usually when he hears me cough, he gives me a cough drop. He hears me, oh Father dear, Father dear, and my wife is doing her work. Our little children, they don't bother her at all when she's trying to get work done. It's awesome. I don't think that we've had a sleepless night. Which is contributing to my youthful glow. We are a perfect family. It's just so wondrous and perfect. Let's look at the next thing. So this is why Eric asked me to come in and give you 10 steps to having, at the very least, a normal family. I mean, you don't have to be perfect like us, but you could be normal, right? Okay, let's see the reality here. What's the next thing say here? Sometimes life isn't picture perfect. The reality is, we don't have a perfect life. The reality is, my family has its ups and downs. We go through our own set of struggles all the time. I mean, this morning, just walking in here to the freezing cold and having to pull space heaters together, I mean, it reminded me of about 13 years ago when I bought a house for my family. And we moved in, and I was just thinking amazing things about this house. I was just thinking, this is going to be awesome. It's so huge. It's a fixer-upper. Yeah, I know that. But It's going to be great. I mean, the rooms are humongous. The upstairs, the one previous owner painted one of the rooms completely black. But that's okay, right? I mean, the bathroom was like this disgusting array of cigarette stains and like strange goop everywhere. But that's all right. We can fix that, right? You know, we bought this house, and I had these like huge ideas of what was going to happen. And my wife was walking in like, oh boy. The second year into owning that home, we finally moved in. And I can recall one night when this is where the space heaters triggered this memory. I can remember we had a couple of space heaters, and some of them we borrowed, some of them we owned. But we were still on the first floor of the house because the second floor of the house was still being renovated. And I can remember having my family in there and having a sinking feeling, what have I done? I'm supposed to be this great dad. And I brought my family into this house that's falling apart. And I'm trying to fix it up. I don't know anything about that. And I need to get help from everybody. And, I'm working all day long at my day job and coming home and working all night long at my night job at the house. And I don't have time for my kids. What's going on? What have I done? I've made a huge mistake here. We've all gone through this stuff, but thankfully we have grace for each other. My family had so much grace for me. I remember the space heaters. We had to put the kids into the front. It was the room next to the dining room that we had no idea what it was actually for. So we put them in there because it was probably the smallest room on the first floor. And I had to get big, huge cardboard boxes and tape them up on the two openings of that room and put space heaters in there with my children as they slept so that they were warm. Because we realized that putting on the heating cost an astronomical amount. We ran the heat one time for a month, or not for a month. It was only a couple of weeks because we were in the house for the heat on for a couple of weeks, and it was like well over like $400 just for the electric bill. It was horrible, and so much work in the house. And we found ourselves going through things like this all throughout our lives. I mean, I've been married to Michelle for 18 years. And throughout my marriage, we've gone through stuff. We've gone through tough stuff. There have been times where we've had those, knock-down, drag-out kind of arguments where, we thought that the morning sunshine was going to rise and we were still having this argument. And the next day we forgot what we were arguing about because it was so stupid that we were arguing because we really loved each other. Have you had these moments in your life with your family? I know everybody comes from a family, so you have to have some kind of recollection of some kind of difficulty that you had in your family, where you had your brother or sister, and you just wanted to just beat them up. Never. Or your mother or father, you just could not take them anymore, and their persistent nagging, it just was enough. Oh my goodness, okay, I'll do my homework. Or maybe it's something a little bit more hard to take. Maybe there's a sickness that you're struggling through. Maybe there's something else. Maybe there's a divorce pending. Or maybe you're already divorced. Maybe things didn't turn out the way that you expected it to turn out. And you just wish that you could turn back the clock, or you wish that you could just wave a magic wand and fix it all. And have a normal family. The one that you see on the TV. No, that's not something normal anymore. Well, you know what we say in the church when there are these families that are falling apart and stuff like that? What we say in the church is, well, if we could just get back to a biblical model of family, then things would be better, right? If we could just get back to a biblical model of family in our households, then we could work out these things. We could make it through this stuff, and there wouldn't be so much pain and anger and difficulty. we would be getting along. Things would be better. Well, let's look. Let's see what's in here in this book that talks about family. And let's go back, way back, to the first family of Israel. God put together, well, not that one. Well, there's that one, but that's not the first family of Israel, okay? Let's talk about the first family of Israel. Israel was put together from Jacob's family, and he had 12 sons. And we're going to read this story in Genesis, way back, the first book of the Bible. And we're going to look at chapter 37, if you want to open with me. If you've heard this story before, it's probably because it's been popularized in a musical called Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Okay? And so if you've seen that, try not to get all like music-y and dancey with me as you go through the story, because that's not what I'm trying to convey. All right, here we are. We're in chapter 37. Let's start with verse 18, okay, of Joseph's story here. Okay, Jacob had 12 sons, and one of his sons' names was Joseph. And Joseph actually was his favorite son. And that's because he had Joseph later on in his life. Jacob actually had 2 wives. It was a different time back then. But you know, Jacob loved Joseph because he had Joseph later on in life. And Joseph was given this beautiful coat of many colors. And his brothers realized that Jacob loved Joseph the most. I mean, it's like Christmas comes and you're one of, you know, more than one kid, you know, and you receive the iPad for Christmas, or you receive the gaming console for Christmas, and all your other siblings, they get underwear or socks, right? I mean, Joseph was the favorite, okay? And so here's Joseph. Verse 18, chapter 37, it says, "When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance." And they were all like, "Oh, it's Joseph!" I get this warm, bubbly feeling of, it's my brother, Joseph. Not quite. Let's read on. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. You ever just want to kill your brother? That's what they wanted to do. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." So, not a great family. The first family of Israel. The one that was supposed to begin the people of God. You know, the Hebrew people were descendants of this family. And here we see that they want to kill their brother. Maybe it gets better. Verse 21. "But when Reuben heard their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue." Let's not kill him. Oh, there you go. That's better. "Why should we shed any blood?" Okay, next verse. Let's just throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. Then he'll die without our laying a hand on him. Oh, well, maybe he was going to kill him, actually, after all. Reuben, no, he wasn't. Reuben was actually secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So there was one of the brothers who was just like, "I really don't want to kill this guy. You know, I hate his guts, but I don't want to kill him. He's our brother." Verse 23, "So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off the robe he was wearing and grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. So if you don't know what a cistern is a big hole that was used to collect rainwater so that they could use the water afterwards somehow. And so that's what they dumped them into. There was nothing in that cistern, so they figured out that's a good spot to put him. Let's just leave him there. Verse 25, "Then, just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. There's a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum balm and aromatic rosin from Gilead to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We shouldn't kill him. Let's sell him. Let's get rid of him this way. That way we don't have blood on our hands. We could just get rid of him. Then one of us could be the favorite." Okay, so right now we've got this picture of the first family of Israel, and it's not looking good. It kind of sounds probably like some of our families, right? Some of us probably have some family that we just wish we could just get rid of because they're embarrassing, because they've done something to us, because you name it. You fill in the blank. Is there someone in your family that's been a problem? Have you been a problem in your family? Have you done something like buy a house that was in shambles and try to... Have you encountered some kind of problem that your family was subject to? Okay, so I guess maybe God has a different story here going on. If you keep reading, you'll notice that Joseph, when he was sold into slavery, actually ended up in a guy named Potiphar's house. And when he was with Potiphar, he did a great job. He worked as hard as he possibly could. He did everything that he was supposed to do. And what happens to him? Potiphar's wife accuses him of rape. So Joseph now is thrown into prison for years. Now, if I were Joseph, I can imagine if I were in prison and after I've been doing everything I should do, after having these dreams that God gave to me, of thinking, oh man, I am supposed to be favored. I'm supposed to be elevated. These are the dreams that Joseph was given by God. And now he's sitting in a dirty prison, living out his life for years. What? This is not how life is supposed to be. This is not how my family was supposed to be. We're supposed to be loving and accepting and care for each other and blah, 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 blah. This is not showing us the depiction of a family that is ideal, is it? It's not showing us that ideal, perfect family. Maybe it's just because it's the Old Testament. I don't know. Maybe there's some other stories in the Old Testament. Let's see. Next slide. Adam and Eve. Oh, wait a minute. Adam and Eve were banished from perfection because of sin. They disobeyed God. And guess what? Their children, Cain and Abel, Cain kills Abel. Murder in that first family. Oh my goodness. Okay, what about next? Noah. Okay, Noah. That's got to be. Noah saved all these people, but no. After the vineyard, after the ark, after the flood, Noah plants a vineyard, and he ends up drinking so much that he's drunk and he ends up naked, and his kids have to cover him up because they're embarrassed by him. It doesn't sound like the ideal family. Let's try something in the New Testament. Okay, here's one. Mary and Joseph. No, not quite, because you hear in one of the first stories, especially in Luke, it tells you the story about when Mary, they go to the temple and they hang out at the temple, and like as they do every year ceremonially, they go to the temple, and then they leave, and they're with this caravan of people, and 3 days later, they realize, oh, wait a minute, where's Jesus, our son? That doesn't sound ideal to me. If that happened today, you'd be calling DYFS. I mean, this is a problem. Okay? There are plenty of families in the Bible that are depicted that tell us these stories of imperfection, of brokenness. And we have to come to this story and we have to look at it and say, well, what are we supposed to do? How do we fix this? How can I have a good family? And God, I think, in that story of Joseph, tells us. That story's not done yet. So if we look into that story of Joseph again, we notice that in chapter 29, when Joseph was in Potiphar's house, verse 2 it says, "The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the Lord, in the home of his Egyptian master." The Lord was with Joseph when he was doing well. The Lord is with us when we're doing well. Okay, but then when he gets thrown in prison, where's God? Verse 21, same chapter. "But the Lord was with Joseph in prison and showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite in the prison, with the prison warden." So when Joseph was doing well, God was with him. When Joseph was in a difficult time, thrown in prison, God was with him. What happens next? Then Joseph is given a position with the Pharaoh. The circumstances play out in a way that Joseph is given favor with the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh gives him a high position because Joseph deciphers a dream for Pharaoh. And Joseph becomes almost basically second in command of Egypt. And he's in control of the storehouses. And then the time passes and there's a famine in the area. And Joseph is in charge of doling out all of the grain from the storehouses so that people can eat. And from far and wide, people are coming into Egypt to try and get help from the famine. And he has an opportunity to re-encounter his family. This broken family, these brothers who were setting him aside, sold him into slavery, who hated him, come into Egypt and now are subject to Joseph's rule. And what does Joseph do? "I gotcha! You tried to kill me! You sold me to slavery! I got you finally! That's it! No grain for you, get out of here." No, that's not what he does. Joseph realizes the larger story. Joseph realizes the larger story. Check this out. Chapter 50. And there's a lot in between there. But let's jump to chapter 50. Verse 19. His brothers are super scared of him because he has their life in his hands. And he says, "Don't be afraid of me. Am I God that I can punish you?" He realizes, you know what? This isn't up to me. There's a bigger story. Listen to what he says. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. And the story goes that he takes in his family again. And that broken family, that broken relationship was restored. Let's look at the next one. You see, God told a greater story in Joseph's life because Joseph submitted his story to God's authorship. There's a bigger story in our lives when there's that failing, that personal sin failing, when there's that brokenness that we might find, when there's something that's not right that we want to correct, that's out of our hands. There's a bigger story going on. There's a story that God's telling in the lives of individuals. And as we approach the Christmas season, We're approaching something that if we really begin to understand what God was doing, it is the greater story of reconciliation of families. It's the great redemption of the family through Jesus. You see, God saw the brokenness in humanity. God saw every single story, even yours and mine, before it even began. And he knew that we would need redemption from this brokenness. So not only did he fix the problem by doing something miraculous, he entered into it. In the story of Matthew 1, verse 18, Jesus is born. He appears in the form of this gentle baby in the meekest of all cities, Bethlehem in Jerusalem. And this baby lives a perfect life. Never sins. He does no wrong, so that all the wrong in our lives could be mended, could be redeemed. It's amazing to me that we go on with our lives, and then we get into the hustle and bustle of Christmas, and sometimes we forget. We go to all the holiday parties, we go to all these family things. Man, sometimes I go to these things and I think, oh man, I really hope I don't see so-and-so. Because this is going to happen. Oh man, I really, really don't like so-and-so because this is what they've done. Oh, I know this is going on in this family's life. Oh, that's so awful. That's so sad. And I go to these holiday parties, and we've all got those people in our lives. And maybe we are those people. But this is what gives us hope. That God invaded our brokenness to redeem us. Each of our family stories are part of God's bigger story of redemption. And if we begin to understand in the middle of our brokenness that there's a bigger story, then maybe, just maybe, he can use our families, our family story, to do something great. Just like Joseph. God brought him to that place so that he could save so many lives. You know that house that was broken down that I had to rebuild? Well, that was such a pain. Okay, I'm not gonna pull any punches. That was a hard situation for us, financially, relationally, physically. I actually got a hernia from lifting drywall around the house, trying to fix that house up. Physically, it was such a pain, that house. It broke me. In some ways, it broke my family. But years later, we sold that house. And it was a way for us. It was beautiful when we sold it, by the way. Man. That seems to be the way things work, right? When you invest into something and finally when it's finished, that's when you move on to something else, right? Well, we sold that house a couple years later, and it enabled us to be in ministry. It helped my family tremendously. It gave me skills that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And God knew in the midst of that, he gave me connections to people that would help me to learn so that I could help others. God wrote a story there so that I could share my story with other people. What's the story in your lives? is your story being seen in the context of God's bigger story through Jesus. Let's pray. God, you are so good to us. You give us so much in our lives. We should be so thankful. Father, I know there are some broken relationships. I know there are some broken people, even in here today, Lord. Father, I know there are some things that are just not right in our own homes, in our own families. And Lord, I pray that we can look to you and your story of redemption to have hope in those circumstances, in those situations, in our families. For the good of our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers, our children. Would you give us eyes that see your redemption story as it plays out? Father, remind us through your Holy Spirit that you are God and that your story is bigger and better than ours. And Father, when we feel this brokenness in the day-to-day, when we feel the brokenness, Father, Lord, you prevent the divorces if they're going to come. You work out the details in this sticky situations, Lord. Lord, you change the hardened hearts. You soften them, Lord, so that love can happen again. Father, help that child to obey. Father, help that parent to not immediately react with a power move, but to react, Lord, with love. Father, help that cousin or that boyfriend or girlfriend to react in such a way that is honorable to you. Father, help us in this family to make it work when the cold presses in, when the winter is on the inside of the house and not just on the outside of the house. When we might find ourselves in a situation, Lord, that we have no answers for, we know, Lord, that your story is perfect and it's playing out for us. And you minister to us in your family, the church, Lord. And you minister to us in your word as you teach us. God, work in our lives. Change us. Grow us. Help us to know, Lord. Help us to know the Redeemer, the Messiah. Especially in this Christmas season. Bring us warmth in the joy and hope of your Son, Jesus. And it's in his precious name that we pray.